The lights backstage glowed softly, casting long shadows across the concrete floor as 9-year-old Jaden Miles stood alone near the heavy red curtains of the AGT stage. He clutched a worn, sky-blue notebook to his chest, its edges frayed, its pages bent from years of being opened, closed, hugged, and cried over. To the world, it was just a notebook. To Jaden, it was everything. It held the story of his life, written in messy handwriting and childish doodles. The first page had a shaky drawing of Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk. Underneath it, written with a dull pencil, were the words, "I want to sing like him one day." But on the second page, one he touched gently every time he flipped through, there was a short sentence written in curved, feminine handwriting. "You shine when you're brave. Grandma May." Tonight, those words felt heavy, almost too heavy for his small hands. The backstage area buzzed with excitement, dancers stretching, magicians rehearsing their tricks, a comedian nervously pacing. But Jaden felt like he was underwater, moving slowly, breathing carefully, trying not to drown in the weight of his own heartbeat. He heard the muffled roar of the audience on the other side of the curtain. The sound felt like thunder rolling through his chest. He swallowed hard. His stomach flipped. His palms grew sweaty. "Hey, buddy." A stagehand with kind eyes bent down to his level. "You okay? First time on a big stage?" Jaden nodded quickly, clutching the notebook tighter. The man smiled. "You'll do great. Just have fun out there." Fun. Jaden tried to imagine fun. But all he could think about was his grandmother, Grandma May, the woman with the silver curls and warm laugh who always told him he didn't need a crowd to shine. "You just need to let your heart come out of your mouth, sweetheart," she used to say, touching his cheek. She died last year, and since then, Jaden felt like someone had turned down the brightness of his world. He remembered the afternoons they spent on the porch of their small home in Georgia. She would tap her foot rhythmically while he mimicked Michael Jackson moves he learned from old videos. She would clap and whistle as if he were already famous. "No fear," she'd say. "Fear steals your song." But tonight, fear felt large, so large that it towered over him, blocking the stage lights, blocking the judges, blocking everything except the memory of her voice. A voice over the speakers announced, "Next up, Jaden Miles." His heart stuttered. This was it. He looked down at his clothes, an oversized black jacket with silver sequins his mom bought from a thrift store, white socks pulled high, and shoes that weren't exactly dancing shoes but were polished enough to feel special. The jacket used to belong to Grandma May. She wore it to church on Christmas. Jaden believed it held luck, love, and a little bit of magic. A cold breeze swept in from the hallway as someone opened the door. Jaden shivered. His mother rushed to him, cupping his face gently. "Baby, listen to me," she whispered. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be you. That's all anyone wants." His father stood behind her, still in his security guard uniform from his night shift. His eyes were tired but full of pride. "I'm proud of you no matter what," he said. Grandma May would be too. At the sound of her name, Jaden felt tears prick his eyes. He blinked them away. If he cried now, he wasn't sure he'd be able to stop. A woman with a headset signaled him forward. "Ready, sweetheart." Jaden took a step, then stopped. His legs trembled. His breath came out shaky. He opened his notebook one last time. Inside were dozens of pages, some with lyrics, some with stick figure drawings of him standing on a big stage, some with stars drawn around the words. One day, his fingers found the page with his grandmother's last handwritten note. The ink had faded slightly, but the love in each curve of the letters was still bright, still warm. "You shine when you're brave." He closed his eyes. He whispered, "Okay, Grandma. I'll try." He took a deep breath and imagined her beside him, smiling that big, gap-toothed smile, humming softly the way she always did when she was nervous for him. He imagined her whispering, "Go on, honey. Sing your story." And suddenly, the fear loosened, not completely, but enough for him to take another step forward, then another, until he reached the edge of the curtain. Through the narrow opening, he saw the blinding glow of the stage. The massive red X lights. The judges seated behind their desk, Simon tapping his pen, Heidi adjusting her mic, Howie leaning forward with interest, and Sophia smiling warmly. The audience stretched out endlessly, like a sea of faces and possibilities. Jaden inhaled sharply. His chest felt tight but steady. He reached up and touched his grandmother's jacket, its soft fabric, its faint scent of lavender. Of love. Of courage. "You got this, baby," his mother whispered behind him. This time, Jaden believed her. He wiped his hands on his jacket, straightened his collar, and nodded at the stagehand. The curtain opened. A wave of light washed over him. His shoes stepped onto the stage floor, tiny compared to the magnitude of the moment. The crowd grew silent, waiting. Expecting. Hopeful. Jaden took one last breath, a breath filled with every memory, every dream, every ounce of bravery his grandmother ever gave him, and stepped fully into the spotlight. For the first time in a long time. He felt ready to shine. The stage lights warmed Jaden's face like a sudden sunrise as he stepped into full view of the audience. For a second, the brightness blinded him. Everything felt too loud, too large, too unreal, like he'd walked into someone else's dream by mistake. A soft murmur rose from the audience. People hadn't expected someone this small, this young, wearing a jacket that shimmered with every tiny movement. He looked like a miniature Michael Jackson, but his eyes told a different story. They were wide, anxious, almost trembling. Simon Cowell leaned forward, studying him with a sharpened curiosity he reserved for only the most uncertain auditions. "What's your name?" Simon asked, his voice echoing through the silent theater. Jaden lifted the microphone with two hands. His voice came out small, like a whisper carried by hope. "My name is Jaden Miles." The audience gave gentle applause, an encouraging ripple that washed over him. But it didn't quiet the storm inside his chest. "How old are you, Jaden?" Heidi asked, smiling warmly. 9, he answered, his voice cracking slightly. Heidi pressed a hand to her heart. "Ah, you're adorable." The audience chuckled. Jaden smiled nervously but didn't feel adorable. He felt like a tiny bird about to jump off a cliff. Simon tilted his head. "So, Jaden, what are you going to do for us today?" Jaden swallowed. This was the moment that felt like a mountain standing in front of him. "I'm going to sing," he said softly. "That's great," Sophia said. "What song?" Jaden's fingers tightened around the microphone. His small heart pounded against his ribs. I'm going to sing a song that I wrote." The judges froze. The audience murmured again, louder this time. A 9-year-old, writing his own song? On AGT? Simon blinked, surprised. Something softened behind his eyes. "You wrote it yourself," he repeated. Jaden nodded. "What's it about?" Simon asked gently. Jaden hesitated. His eyes drifted toward the floor. He could feel the emotions rising inside him, emotions he was scared might drown him if he let them surface too fast. "It's about Michael Jackson," he whispered. "And about missing someone you love." The theater grew still. Even the overhead lights seemed to pause. Jaden's throat tightened. He didn't know if he could say the next part. But he remembered Grandma May's words. "You shine when you're brave." He forced his eyes upward and looked directly at Simon. "It's about my grandma," he said softly. She loved Michael Jackson. And she loved when I sang. I wrote this for her." He said. A hush fell over the room. Sophia's expression softened. Howie nodded slowly, understanding. Simon's gaze lowered momentarily, deepened by genuine emotion. He spoke quieter now. "Thank you for telling us that." Jaden nodded, though his eyes were already filling. His voice trembled as he added, "I wanted to sing her favorite kind of song, something that sounds like Michael, but also like me." Ha! Something shifted in the room. The audience wasn't just watching a child anymore, they were witnessing courage in its purest form. The track director signaled from the side, holding a finger up. "Ready?" Jaden took a shaky breath and nodded. Simon offered one last calm instruction. "Take your time, Jaden." But time felt complicated. Jaden could hear his heartbeat. He could hear the faint buzz of the speakers. He could even hear the rustle of thousands of people holding their breath, waiting for a small boy with a too big dream to open his mouth. The music began. The first soft notes drifted out gentle, nostalgic, a melody built on the same kind of warmth Michael Jackson used in his slow, emotional songs. Jaden had spent months crafting it, humming into his grandmother's old tape recorder, praying the world would hear what he felt. But now, standing here, he wasn't sure he could sing. His voice shook on the first note so faint it almost disappeared. He froze. Fear shot through him like a cold wind. His hands trembled. The microphone felt heavy. Too heavy. The audience leaned forward. A child losing his nerve was not uncommon on AGT, but this moment felt different. Fragile. Sacred. Jaden inhaled sharply, but it came out uneven. He blinked fast. Tears threatened to fall. Behind the judge's desk, Heidi whispered, "It's okay." But Jaden didn't hear her. He heard her. His grandmother. In his mind, he could almost see her sitting in her rocking chair, tapping her foot lightly, smiling at him with that look that said, "I believe in you more than anything in this world." He imagined her humming the way she always did when she wanted him to calm down. And then, something inside him found courage. Not big courage. Not thunderous courage. Small courage. Like a candle flame in the dark. He closed his eyes. He let out another breath. And then his voice, still trembling, but stronger, rose with the next note. It was soft, delicate, almost breakable. But it carried truth. A 9-year-old truth. A truth too honest to ignore. The room leaned toward him, listening. Listening not just for skill, but for meaning. For heart. Jaden opened his eyes as he reached the second line. The fear was still there, but now it stood beside something new. A small spark. A spark he knew belonged to her. He held the mic tighter and whispered the first verse he ever wrote in his notebook. "Sometimes I close my eyes. And I moonwalk through the night. Wishing you were here. To tell me it'll be alright." The notes landed like soft bells, simple, beautiful, sincere. The audience fell silent as if the world had paused. Simon's face shifted, his eyes narrowing with an intensity that said he had just realized this wasn't a cute kid's act. This was a story. A message. A memory set to music. A song of loss. A song of love. A song born from the heart of a child who had seen too much grief but refused to let it break him. Jaden felt the strength in his own voice growing, but he didn't let himself get lost in the sound. He wasn't performing. He was remembering. He was honoring. His voice cracked on the next line, not from nerves, but from emotion. But he didn't stop. He pushed through the tremble, through the lump in his throat, through the fear, because he knew one thing: his grandmother would want him to finish. He sung louder. Stronger. His tiny frame seemed to expand with each lyric. By the time he reached the end of the first chorus, even the quietest person in the back row could feel it. This wasn't just a performance. This was a 9-year-old boy opening his heart for the world to hear. And the world was listening. The second verse flowed out of Jaden like a quiet confession, and with each word, his voice grew clearer, like a light slowly brightening in a dark room. What began as a trembling whisper began to lift, rising into something warm, soulful, unmistakably honest. People in the audience leaned forward in their seats, elbows on their knees, eyes locked on the little boy in the sparkling jacket. They weren't just hearing a song, they were feeling a story. And Jaden felt it too. With every note, with every breath, he felt his fear shrink a little more. It didn't disappear, fear never really does, but it stepped aside, making room for something stronger: courage, heart, and love, the kind that doesn't fade, even when someone leaves. He reached the lyrics he wrote on a night when he missed his grandmother so much he cried into his pillow. He remembered how the words came to him in the darkness. "I dance to remember. I sing to feel you near. Every beat in my heart is like your voice in my ear." His voice hit the phrase, "your voice in my ear," with a tenderness that made a hush fall across the entire auditorium. More than 3,000 people held their breath, as if exhaling would make the moment break. Simon Cowell leaned in, elbows on the table, listening like the world around him had disappeared. Heidi covered her mouth with one hand. Sophia blinked slowly, her eyes shining. Howie, who rarely showed emotional reactions during child performances, had a softness in his expression that said he was witnessing something rare. Jaden didn't see any of this. He wasn't looking at the judges or the crowd. He was singing upward past the lights, past the rafters, into that place in his heart where his grandmother's memory lived. His voice rose higher, clearer. And I know I'm small. But I'll stand tall. 'Cause you taught me how to try. On the next line, his voice quivered. The emotion in his throat tightened. That familiar ache, grief threatened to spill over. Then. It happened. A single tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He let it fall. And that simple act, so unpolished, so real, made every person in the theater feel something shift. Because this wasn't a performance polished by a vocal coach. This was a little boy singing the truth he carried in his heart. Jaden took a breath so shaky it echoed slightly through the microphone. His voice trembled on the next line. I miss you, Grandma. The words weren't part of the lyrics. They slipped out of him raw and unplanned, carried by the weight of everything he'd been holding inside. The audience gasped softly. But instead of stepping back, Jaden stepped forward. Instead of breaking, he broke open. And with that crack, something extraordinary happened. His voice, small, fragile, honest, lifted into a tone so pure, so emotional, that it rang through the auditorium like a bell. He transitioned into the chorus, a high, shimmering melody that made the hairs on people's arms stand up. I'll moonwalk through the shadows, till I find your starry light. You taught me how to shine, how to sing in the night. It was innocent, poetic, and yet carried the emotional depth of someone far older than 9. His voice wasn't technically perfect, but it was perfect where it mattered. It carried truth. It carried love. It carried loss. The audience's eyes began to glisten. Some wiped tears quietly. Others didn't bother hiding them. Jaden reached the bridge, a part of the song he wrote with trembling hands on the night he heard his grandmother's favorite vinyl playing through his father's old speaker. The melody softened. The theater dimmed. It was as if the entire space had become a sanctuary, just him, his voice, and the memory of the woman he loved. So every time I feel alone, I'll hear you whisper in the dark. Keep dancing, baby. You were born to leave your mark. The words floated out of him like a prayer. Then came the high note. The one his father begged him not to push too hard. The one his mom said he didn't have to include. The one his grandmother used to say he would hit one day when he believed in himself. He felt the music swell. He felt the lights brighten. He felt his heart pounding in his chest, fast, loud, desperate. Then he lifted the microphone. And reached for the note. For a split second, everything froze. And then, Jaden hit it. Not perfectly. Not powerfully. But with so much heart that perfection didn't matter. His voice cracked halfway through, but instead of falling apart, he pushed harder. His face tightened, his hands clenched around the microphone, and he held the note with every ounce of love he had for his grandmother. The crack in his voice made the moment even more powerful. It was the kind of vulnerability that shattered people open. The moment his voice softened out of the high note, the entire audience erupted into applause, but quickly quieted again, not wanting to miss a single breath. Jaden closed the song softly, trembling. I'll keep your light inside me. And I'll never say goodbye. The final note faded. Silence. Real silence. The kind of silence that only happens when thousands of people feel the same emotion at the same time. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Not the judges. Not the audience. Not Jaden. He stood still, breathing hard, his tiny shoulders rising and falling with exhaustion and relief. His heart pounded so loudly he almost couldn't hear anything else. Then, slowly, people began to stand. One row. Then another. Then another. Until the entire theater rose in a massive standing ovation. Jaden's breath caught in his throat. His eyes widened. His hands shook at his sides. He didn't understand what he had just done. He didn't understand why thousands of people were standing for him. All he knew was that he had sung his truth. And the world had heard it. The applause grew louder, rolling like thunder. Jaden looked toward the judges' table. Simon Cowell stood. And his face was filled with something rare. Something powerful. Something close to awe. But all Jaden could think was, Grandma. I did it. The applause thundered through the theater, shaking the walls, the rafters, the floor beneath Jaden's tiny shoes. He stood trembling in the golden light of the stage, gripping the microphone with both hands as if it were the only thing keeping him from floating away. He had imagined applause before. He had dreamed of it, pretended to hear it in his bedroom while moonwalking in front of a mirror. But nothing, absolutely nothing prepared him for this. A wave of warmth spread through the theater. People weren't just clapping, they were feeling. Feeling his words. Feeling his courage. Feeling his love. Jaden blinked through the lights, tears still glistening on his cheeks. His chest heaved, up and down, as he struggled to catch his breath. His legs felt weak, like they were made of jelly. And in that moment, something inside him whispered. It might not be enough. What if the judges didn't like it? What if he messed up? What if nobody understood what he tried to say? His courage cracked just a little. Then he heard it. A small voice from somewhere in the audience. Clear. High-pitched. Innocent. Your grandma would be proud. The words soared across the theater like a spark of light. Jaden's head snapped toward the sound. He found her. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, standing on her seat, tiny hands cupped around her mouth as she shouted with all the love her little heart could offer. Her mother tried to gently pull her down, embarrassed, but the audience reacted instantly. They cheered louder. Clapped harder. Some even laughed softly, touched by the purity of the moment. The little girl's words wrapped around Jaden like a warm blanket. His throat tightened not from fear, but from gratitude. Someone out there understood. Someone believed in him. Just like Grandma May used to. A fresh tear rolled down his cheek. Simon Cowell noticed. He pressed a hand to his chest, something he rarely did, and nodded at the boy with an expression that carried no sarcasm, no judgment, only sincerity. When the applause finally softened, Simon leaned forward. Jaden, he said, voice steady but warm, that wasn't a performance. Jaden blinked. He waited. His small, shaking fingers tightened around the mic. That, Simon continued, was a gift. The audience murmured in agreement. Simon's eyes softened, a rare glimmer of emotion flickering across them. There are singers, he said, and there are storytellers. What you just did at 9 years old was tell a story that touched every single one of us. Jaden's heart thumped, hard and fast. Heidi leaned in next. She wiped the corner of her eye, her voice trembling slightly. You made me cry, she said. Not because you're a little boy with a beautiful voice, but because you sang with your heart. That's something even grown-ups struggle to do. Sophia nodded vigorously. You reminded us that music isn't about perfection, she added. It's about feeling. And I felt everything you sang tonight. Houses are, ryo nowen, matters, of ryo nowen. Jaden's lips parted in disbelief. Howie, who had been unusually quiet, spoke last. You've touched more people tonight than you know, he said softly. Your grandmother's love, it lives in you. And tonight, you shared that with the world. Number 1. Jaden swallowed hard. His chest felt like it was glowing from the inside. But despite the praise, despite the standing ovation, despite the tears in the judge's eyes, Jaden still didn't smile. Not fully. Because he wasn't sure what came next. He had seen kids get compliments before. Nice words. Encouragement. But not everyone gets something special. Not everyone gets the thing dreams are made of. The golden buzzer. He didn't expect it. He didn't dare hope for it. But fate had one more miracle waiting for him. Simon's expression suddenly shifted. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, thoughtfully. He stared at Jaden. Then at the golden buzzer in front of him. The audience sensed it. A soft rumble of anticipation moved through the room. Sophia covered her mouth. Heidi whispered something like, "Oh my God." Howie sat up straighter. Jaden blinked, confused. Jaden, Simon said softly, I don't think you fully understand what you just did. He placed both hands on the table. That song, he continued, that courage, that heart. It reminded me why this show exists. He stood. The audience erupted again, screaming, shouting, standing. Jaden froze, breath caught in his throat. Simon reached forward and slammed the golden buzzer. A boom sounded from above. A burst of gold exploded from the ceiling like a shower of stars. Confetti rained down in spiraling bursts, swirling in the stage lights like golden snowflakes. Jaden gasped. His knees buckled. And then, he fell. Right onto them. Crying, sobbing into his sequin jacket, his little shoulders shaking uncontrollably. The audience screamed louder. Some cheered. Some cried. Some simply pressed hands over their hearts. The little girl who shouted earlier clapped wildly, jumping up and down, tears streaking her cheeks. Backstage, Jaden's father rushed forward, pushing past crew, barely holding himself together. He reached his son, scooping him into his arms. Jaden buried his face in his father's shoulder, crying into his uniform. "You did it, son," his father whispered, voice cracking. "You told your story. You told her story." Jaden's mother joined them moments later, wrapping both in her arms. Her tears blended with the confetti in her hair. On stage, gold fluttered everywhere, catching in Jaden's hair, sticking to his jacket, shining on his cheeks. It felt like the whole universe was raining down blessings on him. He lifted his head just enough to whisper one trembling sentence. "Grandma. I hope you saw." And for a moment, just a moment, he swore he felt her warmth around him. Not sadness. Not loss. Just love. Pure, powerful love. The kind that never leaves. The kind that lifts you. The kind that fills a room with golden light and makes a nation believe again. The world felt impossibly still. Michael stood on that giant America's Got Talent stage, the last echoes of his final note floating like shimmering dust in the air. For a moment, there was nothing, no movement, no applause, no breath. It was as if the entire audience had forgotten how to react. Michael's chest rose and fell in tiny waves. He didn't dare blink. He didn't dare hope too much. His little hands were still trembling from the last pose he had held. His hat, slightly oversized, tilted just a bit, casting a soft shadow over his eyes. Sweat glistened on his temple, but his smile was small, fragile, unsure. Then, a sound. The sound of one person standing. A woman in the front row rose slowly, pressing a hand to her heart, tears streaming down her face. Then a second person stood. Then a third. Then 100. Then the entire auditorium. It wasn't just applause now, it was thunder. It was a wave of emotion crashing through the theater, shaking the walls. People were shouting, crying, clapping like their hands were trying to speak for them. Some were even chanting his name. Michael. 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 It didn't sound like a crowd cheering a performer. It sounded like a nation lifting a child who had carried something heavy for far too long. Michael's eyes grew wide. He had never heard applause like this, not in the small parks where he danced for coins, not on the street where people walked too fast to notice his gift. This was different. In the judges' panel, Heidi wiped her eyes first. She leaned forward, still shaking her head in disbelief. "Michael," she whispered, voice breaking. "You didn't just perform. You let us into your heart. That takes courage even many adults don't have." Sophia was next, covering her mouth, trying her best not to let the emotion take over, but failing gloriously. "You are 9 years old," she said, pointing gently at him, "and yet you perform with the soul of someone who has lived 100 lifetimes. You told your story without saying all the pain. But we felt it. Every one of us felt it." The camera panned to the audience again. People were crying openly, hugging each other, clapping until their palms turned red. Then came Howie, leaning in with a softness that wasn't always expected from him. "You made us feel proud tonight," he said. "Proud of you. Proud of your father. Proud that kids like you still exist in this world, kids who remind us that dreams don't die just because life gets hard." Michael swallowed. He didn't know where to look. He felt his legs shake from the weight of the moment. But he still hadn't heard from the one judge who mattered most. Simon Cowell. Simon sat back in his chair, silent, hands clasped together as if he was trying to understand what he had just experienced. The lights reflected softly off his eyes, revealing something rare, something gentle. "Michael," he finally said, his voice low but carrying the weight of the entire room. "What you did today is more than an audition. It was a message." Michael blinked. Simon nodded slowly. You showed us that greatness doesn't come from perfect circumstances," he continued. "It comes from heart. And you have more heart than anyone we've seen on this stage in a long, long time." The room quieted. People leaned forward. Simon exhaled deeply, then stood. "Your story, your courage, and your voice. All of it deserves something special." He placed his hand firmly on the golden buzzer. Time slowed. The judges looked at each other. The audience gasped. Michael's eyes widened once more. Then, boom! The golden buzzer exploded to life, sending shimmering flakes of gold raining down from the rafters like a glittering waterfall. The lights flashed, the music soared, and the crowd erupted with a roar, so powerful it felt like the entire nation had come together at once. Michael covered his mouth. Tears burst out of his eyes in uncontrollable waves. His tiny shoulders shook as he tried to breathe, tried to understand what was happening. His father rushed onto the stage, still wearing the dusty uniform from the hotel he cleaned, at arms open wide. Michael ran to him. Not walked. Not stepped. He ran the way a child runs toward safety, toward love, toward home. The audience melted. Many cried harder seeing that small boy leap into his father's arms, their tears mixing with the falling gold. "You did it, Hijo," his father whispered in Spanish, choking back emotion. "You did it. I told your mama you would shine." Michael sobbed into his father's chest. "I sang for her," he whispered back. "I know," his father said. "And she heard you. Everyone heard you." Back at the judges' table, even Simon looked away for a moment, wiping the corner of his eye discreetly. It didn't matter that millions were watching. Some moments were too human to hide from. The camera closed in on Michael's small face, tear-streaked, smiling, trembling with golden confetti tangled in his curls like tiny stars. For one breathtaking moment, the entire world felt simple. A little boy with a big heart had reminded everyone that pain can become beauty. That grief can become art. That kindness and courage can lead even the smallest voice to echo across a nation. And as the audience rose again in applause, this time softer, more emotional, more meaningful, Michael looked out over the sea of people and felt something he hadn't felt since his mother passed. He belonged. Not because he sounded like Michael Jackson. Not because he danced like a legend. But because he had spoken the truth of his heart. And the world had listened. The lights dimmed slightly as Simon gave a final smile, nodding as if to say, "This is only the beginning." And for Michael, it was. Because on that night, a 9-year-old boy didn't just stun America. He healed a piece of it.